Good morning, everybody. So first, let's just quickly run through the tips for COVID. I think it's important, and it hasn't been this important in a long time. With the current uh, peak that we experiencing, please remember to always wear a mask when you're in public. Wash your hands regularly, soap, alcohol-based sanitizer. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, your mouth areas where the virus can get entry to your body. Avoid close contacts with people who are sick, especially when you go out and you do business. Take a look, pay attention to that. Cover your cough, sneeze with a flexed elbow. Quite important not to spread something. Remember, the virus is contagious before you know that you've contracted the virus. So especially that first few days, it is so important to protect your customers and the people around you. And clean and disinfect frequently. Use surfaces and objects. So with that being said, let's move on to today's presentation. What we're going to be discussing today is IOPSA appeal to SABS on a current DSS process. The DSS is a draft standard that's out for public comment. Now, to start putting this in perspective, where does it all comes from? Let's just quickly look, and I think it's important not only for this topic, but just to understand who's in control of standards, where does it come from, who's authorized to do what. So under the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the DTIC, the Standards Act have been published. It's been there before. It's been the latest version is the 2008 version. That act specifies that the document, the national norm, be written, and that SABS shall administer standards, shall create standards, amend standards as per the national norm. Referred from the national norm is a document called ARP 013, also maintained by SABS, but that's a document that describes the structure of a standard, what can be in, what cannot be in, and so on. What is important in all of this, without getting into all sorts of unnecessary details, is SABS are obliged to follow this. This is the legally required process. This process is based on some base principles. The one principle that's important is all decisions, no decision is made by an individual or by SABS. It's made by a national technical committee that is a representative committee. It has representation from different sectors of the industry. All decisions made by this committee is based on consensus. All the technical decisions made, what requirements go in and does not go in, is based on consensus. Yes, there are some voting processes to formalize things, but the consensus process is critical in this process. And the purpose of standards, it has to be for the good of all parties. Single organizations, individuals, and so on cannot impose what they want in this process. Everybody taking part of this has got the responsibility to make sure that it is for the good of everybody. Everybody differs in different cases, but the principles stand. So what happened? What did SABS, not SABS, what did IOPSA appeal against, or what happened? So the national standard SANS 10254 for the installation of geysers. Recently, a draft standard have been published, circulated for public comment. It's called the DSS. So this DSS submits a proposal that the full requirement that is in the current standard. In the current standard, there's a requirement that says that the COC, a professional body COC, shall be issued for every hot water installation. And the draft standard, or the draft that's been published, proposed that this requirement be deleted completely. Now, before we discuss that in a little bit more details, what we can say is, understand, this is what the draft that's been circulated. IOPSA appealed this decision. We sent an appeal to the CEO of the SABS stating requesting that this draft be removed. And during this presentation, we'll give you the reasons why this appeal have been sent through. Also, just so that you understand where everything fits into place, the different authorizations or the structure within this process. So that structure you see there, on the top of the structure is the CEO of the SABS. It's got the final say, although the CEO does not have an operational function. It's sort of an oversight function when necessary. Then there's a Standards Approval Committee, SAC. In the top left-hand corner, you will see the responsibilities of this committee. Touch on that quickly. But under the SAC is the operational structure. That is the technical committees that address the standards. Each technical committee can have depending on the area, they can have subcommittees and so on. So what we're dealing with is SABS Technical Committee 138, Subcommittee 01, 02 actually. Sorry, I noticed a mistake on this presentation. It's not important though. Quickly going back to the Standards Approvals Committee, what are they authorized to do? They are responsible for governance. They appoint the members of the TC. They can guide the TC. They can approve recommendations. So the TC will make a recommendation, say, this is the requirements that should be in the standard. And then the SAC has got the responsibility to review that and approve that. And they have to monitor compliance with this, of this whole process if everything is done in accordance with the national norm. What is important there is the SAC does not have the right or the authority to determine any requirement, to make any proposal of what the requirement should be. They only have the right to, they may intervene if they see that something is wrong, but they may not decide, the right to decide what the requirement should be is not been, they're not authorized to do that. If they find something wrong, they can point to the TC and say, this is what's wrong. And then the TC must go through the full process to rectify that or to make another proposal. The process of amending a standard. So this is what the national norm says, how a standard should be amended. It starts with a simple proposal. Anybody can make a submission and say, please change the standard for this reason. The technical committee must then, I'm just going to refer to committee, but the committee then need to agree to the process. So there's a vote that happens to say, yes, we agree, let's work on making an amendment. The next step is when the committee will work and they will compile a draft. So this is an iterative process. They will compile a draft, discuss it, make another version, discuss it, make another version, until everybody agrees, until there's consensus of what the requirements should be. After they've compiled that and there's consensus on what the requirement should be, then only does it get put forward to a vote to the TC. Then the TC vote and say, yes, we are happy with this version of the standard. Once the TC is happy with that, then it goes to the draft, the DSS publication. This is a stage where the public has got the opportunity for 60 days to comment. Any member of the public can get a copy of the standard and they can comment on that standard then. After the 60 days, all the public comments must be addressed by the TC. They have to go through every single comment and give a reply to every member of the public that submitted comments. That, depending on the comments, if everybody is happy and it's only editorial changes, they can go ahead and publish the standard. More often than not, there are no comments, then they can go ahead and publish standards. But if there are comments, it can go all the way back to the committee to rewrite the draft. And from there onwards, it has to go to the TC again to vote and get circulated for public comments again. In this case that we are dealing with today at the moment, what did happen is the proposal to amend did happen. The TC did agree to proceed with this, to reevaluate that and to create something. A committee draft have not been agreed on. So the technical committee did not agree on what the final draft should be. The technical committee did not have the opportunity to vote on this draft at all. However, it has been sent to sent out for public comment. The SAC gave instruction that it be published for, or the SAC gave the not only instruction that it should be circulated for public comment, but it also provided the content that has to be changed, even though the technical committee never agreed to that. So what did happen in the background? The committee on a previous run, the committee circulated a similar draft for public comment. In that draft, the public comments that came back were explicit in stating that they want the COC. Everybody were in support of the fact that a COC must be issued, but they identified that, or the majority, I'd say at least 80% of the comments identified that the standard could be misinterpreted, and that it could look like any plumber can issue his own COC, that it would not have been under a controlled condition. So the technical committee then went back, discussed that matter, and the intention was to specify, to highlight the fact that that the COC must be under the control of a professional body. The committee then asked the question, can there be more than one professional body? They felt that it was important that that it's not exclusionary, that there could be more than one. So the committee asked for a legal opinion to just confirm, can there be more than one professional body, or can there be more than one professional body for plumbers? In this case, a non-statutory professional body for plumbers. So on a side note, yes, most definitely. If you take a screenshot, you can see the references. It is most definitely allowed that non-statutory professional bodies, there can be more than one. That's all controlled by the NQF Act by SAQA. The rules and how that can happen and cannot happen. Unfortunately, while the committee asked for this legal opinion, that legal opinion was never given to the committee to evaluate further, so that they can finish their deliberations in the consensus process. What did happen is a organization, the IPA, Inclusive Plumbers Association, lodged a complaint to the SAC. They sent a complaint to SABS, and we're not going to go into the details of that complaint. We don't have time for all of that. But the short version, what happened is the SAC then intervened. They felt that they had to step into the process and make some changes. And the SAC then came forward with a instruction or a presentation to the committee to say, this is wrong and this needs to change. The SAC then asked the committee to vote whether they agree to implement this change or not. I mean, at this stage, IOPSA also submitted a whole proposal to the SE to say that the legal reasons, or the reasons that they give for the change to happen, is not sound at all. There were many different, or many legal opinions that's in question, things, different arguments that hasn't been considered, and so on. And I see Mr. Van Zyl just joined us. Welcome, Steve. So until we hear from Steve, I'll continue. So in this process, Steve, I'll just finish this slide and then you can continue with the next one.
Thank you, Herman, and thank you.
Okay, so basically what happened is the SAC made this presentation to the committee. The committee were unable to evaluate it. You were sitting there with two opinions. The one was an opinion by the SAC, which they say this has to be implemented. IOPSA presented a very credible second opinion, a different opinion that made a lot of sense, and that we had a lot of support for, verified by our legal team as well, that contradicted the SAC opinion. But then, unfortunately, SABS tried to force this down to a vote, and the committee simply couldn't decide between the two opinions. because they did not have the information. They don't know what to believe, because the one says this and the other one says that, and there were nothing else to guide them in making sure that they can make informed decisions. So the SABS then led the committee to say, well, in a case like that, we have to escalate it to the SAC to make a decision. So understand this. In other words, the SAC told the committee that the SAC must now make a decision. The decision the SAC had to make was to choose between two opinions. One of those opinions were their own, and the other one were IOPSA's. So no surprise there that the SAC then eventually decided that their own opinion were the correct opinion, and that must be implemented. And they gave direct instruction that this has to be sent out for public comment in the DSS phase. Mr. Van Zyl, would you like to take over from this slide?
Yes, I would. And first of all, just a big apologies. I've had some major technical difficulties this morning, so I'm working through my phone at the moment. So, Herman, just to take over from where you've left, there was and I'm going to just state a few key elements that obviously we need to just bring to our listeners' attention, or that we can share. And it's very clear that SABS did not follow the legal mandated process, and that the SAC absurd powers not awarded to them in the national norms, and this obviously prevented the committee to have the appropriate debate, to basically reach some sorts of consensus through a decision-based system. And the decision was made by SAC based on their opinion, and obviously not taking into account the other legal opinion that we've obviously then received. So on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that there's the appeal that we submitted to the executive officer of the CEO of SABS, and it is dated the 9th of June 2021. So in the appeal, basically the main thing that we asked for is please withdraw the DSS process, as we felt that we could reach consensus had the matter just went back to the special committee for decision making and consensus reaching. And then we also just stated, please allow the committee to resolve the required topic or the required problems that have arisen, and let's debate and reach a consensus. I think the reason, Herman, or the team, that we asked for the DSS process to be stopped, it's very simple. As I said, we believe that we could have obviously sorted this out at a very easy and a quicker process than actually going out to DSS, which is 60 days, which is basically just adds on to a delay, in my opinion. All right, so let's just have a look. Thanks, Karim, for moving it to the next slide. So if you look at that, I just want to run through what IOPSA supports. So we're saying we support the need for qualified plumbers to be recognized as professionals, and that the health and safety of the consumer should never or not be compromised. IOPSA recognizes the value of professional bodies, including the work, and that it's irreplaceable value then contribution that these associations bring. IOPSA acknowledges that the responsibility of administering the COC must be done by a professional body for the plumbing industry registered in terms of the relevant national legislation. And we will continue to advocate that the COC has dramatically improved compliance, health and safety, plumbers' knowledge, and the image of the plumbing as a professional occupation. If you look to the right, you'll see what was the existing wording, is the existing wording in the standards. And if you read on the right-hand side what we actually proposed, and I'm going to just read it to you, we said that on the completion of an installation, a certificate of compliance from a professional body for plumbers registered in terms of the relevant national legislation shall be issued to the owner of the installation or the body requiring such a certificate. On 3.3, what we had proposed as IOPSA is that any professional body for the plumbing industry registered in terms of the relevant national legislation. So, ladies and gents, that brings me to my next slide. Karim, if you could just forward that to the next slide, please. So, ladies and gents, where we're standing at the moment is that we've lodged the appeal. We hope to have an answer, and a favorable answer, within the next 30 days. and that's stated in the national norm. In order, so if you do lodge an appeal, which is normal process, these things do happen. It's part and parcel. It's written into the national norm. We've lodged the appeal. We've had our say, and as I said, the SAC have decided to publish the DSS process, and that I just want to bring to your attention is dated the 22nd of June, and the closing date for public comments. So those comments, your comments as an example, need to be in before the 24th of August 2021. Karim, can you just move to the next slide for me, please? All right. What I would like to maybe just point and just take a minute is that we all have differing opinions. You know, we don't always agree on certain things. What I do want to say is that, yeah, is a great opportunity for us to state our comments. Unfortunately, we won't be able to tell you what to put in those comments. You know, those need to come from yourself. We have had numerous people phoning in and members, public phoning in and asking us, they're slightly confused about where to find the link, what are the steps, where do you go, what do you need to do, will they send you this and that. So we have decided just to do a bit of basic training on the DSS process. On last week, Thursday, we also mentioned it. We've had some huge uptake for the training. And if you do want to join, please feel free to send me a request. And my email's on the right-hand side there. It's technical@iopsa.org. So if you feel you're just a little bit unsure, you want to partake, please send me an email. We've had other requests of people saying, well, Steve, can I just simply say yes or no? Unfortunately, you know, you need to add a little bit of meat to the bone. You're going to need to explain a little bit more in detail. You need to say, for example, why you believe, you know, there needs to be, or why are you saying what you're saying? Why are you backing? What is your decision? What is your decision making regarding that? You know, at the end of the day, you know, ask yourself questions. Will it improve the quality of life of society? Is it maybe paying attention to matters such as the health and safety and protection of the environment, and protection of the public? You know, on a separate note, you know, these comments must come from you. You know, it's going to be very, very important for you to load these comments and to state these comments. But on a separate note, we need to do a bit of training. We'll notify you in due course as to when this training will be happening. Give me just 1 second. Karim, is it possible just to move to the next slide? So ladies and gents, the DSS process and the appeals outcome will obviously need now to play out. The outcomes will be very important for our industry's future. Unfortunately, it'll probably take some time, as I mentioned, to get to finality. Until then, we encourage all our IOPSA members and plumbers in general just to continue to abide by the standards. Before we take some questions, I just want to reiterate that what you're seeing there on the right-hand side is the SABS code of conduct that I've shared. And what I want to just point out on those little circles that I've allocated or drawn around certain words is the word normative. It means it's not negotiable. It's very clear in what can and can't be done at these TC meetings. And that's basically the code of conduct that we need to adhere to when we partake in these sessions. You'll also see there, it says uphold the consensus process. I'm not going to read each section to you. It talks about media engagement, and Herman surely might have touched on right at the beginning of the slides that we couldn't basically engage with anyone at that stage because we're still part of the process. And obviously now that it's a DSS, we are able to share a few things with you. So thank you for that. Thanks for bearing with us. I want to say I'm extremely proud to be part of an organization that follows process and chooses the moral high ground. IOPSA remembers doing this for you. We take our industry, the consumer safety and the plumbers to heart. And that's why we will leave no stone unturned in this process. Just trying to sum it up, correct procedures and process must be followed. I think that's what we need to try and get across the mission. We want to say that we need to reach consensus in this process. and they always need to be backed by facts and merits. And with that, I would want to say thank you very, very much. And thanks, Herman, for helping me out in the beginning. Thank you. Please keep well and keep safe.